In the heart of an ancient, untouched forest, hidden from the eyes of most travelers, there lay a pond unlike any other. The locals had many names for it: the Whispering Water, the Forbidden Basin, but most simply called it the Cursed Pond. It was said that the still, black waters hid more than fish and reeds. A creature of immense size and malice guarded the pond, a monstrous cobra that devoured anyone foolish enough to venture too close. Legends whispered that the pond wasn't always cursed. Long ago, it may have been a place of peace and beauty, where villagers gathered for cool water and shaded rest. But now, not even the bravest hunters dared approach. At night, they often spoke of the strange, metallic echoes they heard coming from the forest, as if something beneath the surface was waiting, watching. However, legends often fail to quench the thirst for gold, and treasure seekers are rarely ones to heed the warnings of old villagers. One day, a young and ambitious treasure hunter strode into the forest with a determination that matched even the sharpest blade he carried. His name was Kiran, and he had heard the tales, the kind that spoke of unimaginable riches buried deep in the mud surrounding the cursed pond. Coins, jewels, perhaps even relics of forgotten kings, enough to make any man rich beyond his wildest dreams. Hours passed as Kiran followed the faint trails that wound through the dense, oppressive forest. The air grew thicker the closer he got, and the usual vibrant sounds of birds and insects slowly faded into eerie silence. Then he reached it, the infamous pond. Its waters were black, reflective like polished onyx, and utterly unmoving. No ripples, no wind to disturb its surface, only a deathly stillness that sent a shiver up his spine. The place reeked of decay. Scattered on the ground were animal carcasses, their bones bleached white, and surroundings marked with deep grooves, as though something large had dragged its prey to an untimely end. And then there were the tracks. Deep and wide, they crisscrossed the muddy shore, serpent tracks, unmistakable in their pattern and size. But behind those mortal warnings, gold glittered faintly on the shoreline. Coins, faintly visible in the muck, scattered as if they had been spilled from a careless hand. Kiran's heart quickened. His prize lay so close. Not one to falter, he tread cautiously toward the edge of the pond, taking in every detail. He bent down and scooped up a single coin. It was heavier than he expected, ancient and minted with symbols he didn't recognize. A nervous chuckle escaped his lips, his fear and pride duking it out in his chest. But then, everything changed. From the depths of the pond, the water suddenly erupted. A beast broke the surface, massive and terrifying. A cobra, the cobra, its body stretched wider than a tree trunk, glistening with dark, slick scales that shimmered unnaturally in the dim forest light. Its yellow eyes locked onto Kiran, unblinking, and its hood flared wide with jagged patterns that resembled the face of a devil. It hissed, a deafening sound that sent leaves trembling on the nearby trees. Kiran's hands trembled, but he didn't run. He had come too far, risked too much to turn back now. His instinct screamed, fight. In a single motion, he unsheathed his trusty knife and gripped it tightly. The cobra lunged, its enormous jaws opening wide, and Kiran rolled to the side just in time to avoid being swallowed whole. Heart pounding, he leaped onto its slick body. With all his strength, he drove the knife deep into the creature's hide. The cobra writhed and hissed, twisting violently to throw him off. Again, Kiran plunged the blade into its flesh, his desperation driving every stab. But then, as suddenly as the battle had begun, it stopped. The cobra let out an agonized cry. Its body convulsed before collapsing onto the ground, a lifeless heap. Kiran staggered backward, panting, blood staining his hands. And yet, something was wrong. The cobra's body began to change. Its form shimmered, twisting and shrinking before his very eyes. Scales turned to wrinkled flesh, fangs receded, and where the cobra once lay, an old man now sprawled on the ground.
"You've done it. Finally."
The old man rasped, his voice thin and labored.
"For centuries, I was trapped in that monstrous form, cursed to remain in that state until a hero came to slay me. But you didn't free me. You killed me. My curse will remain, and so will this place."
His voice faded, and his body crumbled into ash, caught briefly in the faint breeze. All that was left behind was a mound of gold coins, more than Kiran could ever carry. His eyes widened in disbelief. This was it, riches beyond measure. His entire journey had led to this moment of triumph. But as his fingers reached for the glistening treasure, a cold chill crept through his body. It started in his spine, then spread outward, a freezing, immobilizing intensity that stole the breath from his lungs. He dropped the coins, clutching his chest as an unspeakable pain shot through him. Kieran tried to scream, but his voice was lost to the forest, leaving only the sound of the wind and the ominous stillness of the pond.